Will you build a home or a hotel, a traditional farm or a server farm? Introducing Hacienda Castilla. St. Matthew's Assurance presents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Over 800 square miles of pristine, uninhabited coastal property in central Chile, ready for industrial, business, and residential development. Hacienda Castilla features almost unlimited open spaces and some of the most beautiful beaches in South America. With parcels ranging from 20 acres to over 200 acres, Hacienda Castilla will be adjacent to Copia Port A, the deepest natural port in all of South America. Experience future-forward development limited only by your imagination. What will you create at Hacienda Castilla? Become part of something completely new. For more, visit haciendacastilla.net today.
Hello, Vax Choice and Clout Hub community. Thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of In the Lion's Den, hosted by Bill Lionberger. How are you doing today, Dr. Bill?
Doing excellent. You need to put on a few more jackets today, though, with all that winter weather dropping in.
Yeah, -3 degrees here in Kansas where I'm at today, so that's fun. We've also got probably 18 inches or 2 feet of snow, so that's wonderful, all overnight. But yeah, today we've got a guest that's familiar with Vax Choice and Clout Hub, but has not yet been on In the Lion's Den. We've got Matthew Newgent today. He's a West Point graduate, former Army engineer officer, and military intelligence veteran with expertise in several languages. His 11-year military career included service at Fort Bragg, training at airborne, ranger, and sapper schools, and worked as a military intelligence interpreter. He is a founding member and vice president of donor relations for the MacArthur Society of West Point graduates, and also leads congressional affairs. Now an entrepreneur and president of Newgent Consulting, he continues to drive impact through his leadership and his strategic expertise. I like Matthew. I've met him and we've had him on before, so I'm excited to hear what he's got to tell us. He says he's got some new information regarding China and our trading ports. So
exactly. We're here to talk about some things that relate to our geopolitical sort of geopositioning, if you will, and the way things line up around the world. So I'm looking forward to the show.
Yes, me too, Dr. Bill, and I will be in the background and come back at the end for questions.
Excellent. So welcome to In the Lion's Den. Today's show title, Red Tide, Countering China's Influence and Control in Latin America. And to my open. In the heart of Latin America lies a strategic asset that holds the potential to reshape global power dynamics, Chile's Deepwater Port Project, which is similar in importance to the Panama Canal, even though it's not a canal. This is no ordinary port. It is a geopolitical chess piece with the power to tip the scales of global influence, military dominance, and economic supremacy. Chile's Deepwater Port Project stands as a gateway between the Pacific and global markets, a crucial node in the vast web of international commerce, but its value stretches far beyond its economic importance. Just like the Panama Canal, this port project has the power to unlock strategic military advantages, become a key lever in the global contest for influence between China and the United States and in the Pacific. China continues to aggressively expand its footprint across Latin America. Its interests in controlling and exploits this port for its own strategic interests are impossible to ignore. The Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, has been methodically building ties in the region through infrastructure investments, trade partnerships, and military agreements. If China gains control, it could establish a military and economic stronghold, altering the strategic balance in the Western Hemisphere. The U.S. has a long regarded the Americas as its sphere of influence, and the stakes are too high for it to stand while China inches closer to dominating this critically important waterway. The race to secure this port is not just about trade, it's about the ability to protect power and project power to protect national security and control the world's food supply. Important questions. What happens if China gains control of this port instead of the U.S.? How will the strategic advantages shift into favor of Beijing, and what are the national defense implications for the U.S. and its allies? The world is watching. The battle for Chile's deep water port is not just a regional conflict. It's a high-stakes global showdown. Join us as we explore why the U.S. must act decisively to secure its future in the face of China's ambitions in Latin America. And welcome to In the Lion's Den. And welcome, Matthew Newgent. How are you today?
It's great to be here, Dr. Bill. It's an honor to be here.
Well, we're here to talk about some interesting things going on down in Chile, yes?
Yeah, and I tell you what, it was a great intro, and we're done. I tell you what, you and I had the chance to chat and talk about this, and you really captured it. There are a lot of big adjectives in there, but this port project is really a big deal, folks. And I like how you said it's a showdown, but the United States hasn't even showed up yet. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The first thing to get an understanding of this is to put your military hat on. Okay, we Americans, we see, life is like a movie where we can, turn it on, turn it off, and we're just here to be entertained. Now, the Chinese look at everybody, at life, as warfare. It is written into their law that if you own a business, you will do the bidding of the CCP when they call. So everything that the CCP does is in context of warfare. Dual use is what it's called. So the first thing is put your military hat on, because the enemies of the United States, okay, they hate us. They don't like our freedom of speech. They don't like our right to petition. They don't like our ability to write what we want in the press. They don't like our right to bear arms or to own property or our Judeo-Christian heritage, because every single one of those rights and everything else in our Bill of Rights goes directly against tyranny. So put that military hat on. And second is if you've ever heard, your audience is pretty educated and informed, but the Belt and Road Initiative, what it is, it's a Chinese logistical network for control. Okay. When you hear the word BRI, okay, military, the military hat on, you ready? Chokehold. 2 hands up to somebody's throat. Chokehold. And we'll talk about that. And you might think that's a little bit intense. No, it is not. And I'll go through this here, but you got to understand that China has a 100-year plan for dominance, and they have written books. They've actually published about how they are going to dominate the United States, and they've made tremendous progress. Whereas the United States thinks in context of 2 and 4 year increments. And, President Trump has been really uncommon in his presidencies to think more long-term than presidents in a long time. And the third thing, which you gave a great intro to, is this port project is although it's not a canal, it is as important as the Panama Canal, and in some cases more important. But that's kind of an intro, and I'll leave it to you, Bill. I'll follow your lead, sir.
You mentioned the BRI and the 100-year plan. I don't think that we can overstate really the importance of that long-term thinking, right? I mean, they've been able to export into the U.S., 30, 50, 70,000 military-age men, who knows what the number really is, because they've been doing it for a long time. And they're here for a purpose. Why would you need a police force from your own country in the U.S. because you have so many of your kind here that you need to keep track of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so this speaks to you got to put the military hat in. Don't think like the typical American. People have said, prior to the end of the Gulf Wars, we've been at war for 20 years. It's not true. Our military has been at war for 20 years, or had been. Okay, so most Americans they weren't at war. They were at the malls or on their phone or at the movies. Okay. Yeah. So most Americans are not going to get this. You have to think from a military lens. And the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, I use that interchangeably. Okay, they think in life in context of warfare. Okay. So in terms of the United States, Dr. Bill, that's the CCP sending out a messages. We don't care where you are. We will reach out and touch you and exercise our power and our will upon you.
You make a good point. People are busy with their lives and their cell phones and, all the things that go on, and they catch a glimpse of whichever brand of news agency they tend to want to watch. But the reality is that we have bases all around the world. They're strategic. We gave one up in the Middle East. We shouldn't have, and lost some men along the way. But we have these strategic footholds. And the CCP, it appears, as I view it, is they have been very strategic in how they go to these different countries and get themselves, planted in there with money, and then they control the governments, etc. People might wonder, well, why is it so important to go all the way down to Chile for something that's of U.S. interest? Maybe you can catch us up.
Yeah. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. Melissa, if you could bring up the Latin America map. I listen to podcasts all the time. I usually listen. I don't, watch typically because I do it while I'm driving. But if there's ever a time, folks, where you could look at something, please look at this map. Okay. What we've got here is a picture of Latin America. The CCP has over 40, that's 40, port and port projects they either control or in the process of controlling. And when you look at this, what you've got here, Latin America is basically Mexico all the way down to the southern tip of Argentina. Now, this is actually a little bit dated. It's got in the high 30s in terms of ports. Now, that's great. Now, we're going to focus on the circle here. That's Chile, the country of Chile. Now, for those of you who don't know, is that Chile is very, long in terms of north to south longitudinally. Chile is as long north and south as the United States is wide, approximately 2,700 miles, 2,700 miles. So it is very long. And it lies on the west side of the Andes, but on the other side of the Andes is the breadbasket of Latin America. So whoever controls the ports controls access to the breadbasket of Latin America. So whoever controls this controls the food supply. And not about you guys, but I don't like the idea of paying $7.50 for a dozen eggs. Okay. Now, at least most of the time we can get this, but whoever controls these vital ports will have access to a significant amount of the world food supply. And if you back out a little bit, okay, let's take a look at the Pacific map. Okay. And this is another really important slide here. So if you look at, South America, and the biggest piece is obviously Brazil, there are a lot of ports in Brazil and southern Brazil, because that's, like I said, the breadbasket of Latin America. So in order for China to get its food and its shipping, it has to go around, sail east of the east coast of Brazil and then go into the Panama Canal. But if it gets a port in Chile, that red dot there, it can save up to 15 days on the trip. Additionally, let's go to the China Max slide, if you could, please. Now, the biggest ship that China has, it's called the China Max, and there are other ships around the world with this level of draft, D-R-A-F-T. That's the length of the depth of water it needs in order to go to port. It's 26 meters. There are only 2 ports in Latin America on the west side. One is in Peru, which the CCP has been trying to get for 20 years, which they haven't. I'll tell you about that. I've got some intel on that a lot of people don't know about. And another one, and it's the project we're going to talk about today, which the CCP has a memorandum of understanding, MOU, actively right now. The CCP is attempting to buy this port from an American company. And the American company does not want to sell to the CCP. And that's why we're getting this out to you, because they reached out to me and said, help. And that's what I'm here for. It's hard to get to the president of the United States, and it's hard to get to the Secretary of State because this is in their lane. But if you'll notice the size here of Chinamax, and then if you look at Panamax, the Chinamax, okay, thank you, has 8 times the capacity to ship from the Chilean coast to its destinations, China, the Far East, etc. So let's go to the Pacific map again, please. Now, if you'll notice here, and this is why we kind of say this is the Panama Canal of Latin America. If you have access to that deep water port, okay, and if you use Chinamax, the significance and the relevance of the Panama Canal is not so high. And right now, after Secretary Rubio and President Trump basically displaced the CCP out of the Panama Canal, it's not fully done, but it's going to happen. The CCP has taken active measures in the past few weeks. Okay, and I was given permission to say this, but one of my team members from my consulting company, he owns a company that does a lot of arbitrage and a lot of business internationally. The CCP reached out to him and said, we will pay you $5 million. $5 million if you will use this money, $100 million to tie up the Peruvian port. Okay, there are only 2 deep water ports. Both are projects. One is in Peru, which the CCP has been trying to get for 20 years, but the Peruvians will take their money, but they don't really want them there based on different sources. And the one right now. So you got to understand, after Trump came on board, Rubio came on board and displaced the CCP out of the Panama Canal, the CCP is not giving up. So they've taken active measures there. So there are 2 places. We believe that, very confident that the Peruvian deep water port project is important, but the one urgent right now, and could we go to the Latin America picture, please? Okay, and that circle right there in Chile, okay, something I have not mentioned yet in terms of logistics, okay, there are only about 2 passes across the Andes Mountains. So you've got the port here, which has access to the Far East, China, to feed their people. We want them to feed their people. I've got to be clear, but we don't want the chokehold of the BRI in our hemisphere. Okay. Now let's go to the map, which shows the influence of the port with the gold ring around it. So on the left, you see that dot there that's the location of the port. Now that gold ring is the influence. That's a big part of the breadbasket of Latin America. Okay. Of South America, excuse me. So whoever has that, they don't have to go around the the Brazilian East Coast and go through Panama. It almost obviates the need for the Panama Canal. Okay.
So you're saying that the railways across the Andes are already in place.
Yes. Well, the passes are in place for vehicles. Okay. But if the plan is for the CCP, they've been on this for years. Okay. The plan is to make that pass, and whoever controls this port is going to control the relationships with these South American countries. Now, I know this is a little bit wonky in terms of geopolitical politics, but it is a big deal. As you know, Brazil, which is almost as big as the United States, very influential country. It could go either way as far as communist or not. It's very left of center. If the CCP controls this port, they will be able to leverage this port and access to those economic sources to say, hey, you're going to dance with us. And let's go to the Latin America picture, please, with all the ports. And if you look at Peru there, I mean, when I say the BRI, remember, chokehold, dual purpose, okay? In Peru, the CCP has control not only of, key ports, but it also has control of, are you ready for this? The power grid. Okay, thank you. So in terms of, what is the big deal about the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative? Remember, chokehold, dual purpose. In some cases, the CCP not only controls the ports, the power grid, but in some cases, they control the country's communication system. We're talking phones, internet. How do you control the people? Whoever controls the port is going to control a significant amount of the wealth. It can also be used to ship in arms, troops, and if it controls that area, it can say, hey, we don't want your troops around here. We don't want your citizens around here. And China has already done that, at least in one place I'm aware of, which is Peru. Okay.
So let me jump in. So being kicked out of Panama has put greater emphasis on their need to have a port, one, and then two, control something that enables them to have this deep water port for this China Max, which lets them move a lot more goods, I would assume, and then helps to give them greater influence in the region because they can exert that leverage that they're in the long ball trying to have in South America, right?
100%, Dr. Bill. Two things there is leverage and long-term. The Panama Canal was open for business in 1914. I mean, it's 110 years ago. It's 111 years ago. It's not hard math, but multiple generations of control. Okay. We know that the CCP has murdered 70 million of its own people. There's a social credit score. You know that in Peru that they control key ports. They control over 50% of the power grid. And in some Latin American countries, they control the communications. Military hat, folks, do not be fooled by the intentions of the Chinese and the CCP. Okay. So in terms of leverage, whoever has this deep water port has the ability to leverage everything in those South American countries there in the breadbasket. And long term, 111 years is how long the Panama Canal has been open. Once the CCP gets in here, it's going to be really difficult to displace them, if at all. And right now, they have an active MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. The CCP is conducting due diligence to acquire this. This MOU expires in a matter of days, March 20th, at which time, and this is typically how it works, folks, okay? A little bit of business insight here, okay? My client tells me that it expires on March 20th, at which time they expect an offer they can't refuse because they've been invested 7 years and there's been over $110 million invested in this massive parcel of land. It's actually 850 meters. And Dr. Bill, you said leverage, control. There is a lot of space there for a military base and an airstrip.
So what's the national defense play here? What's the significance of the military holding ground? I mean, when you think about also Panama, how can we kick out the CCP in Panama? Because we built it and we're also in the agreements as it relates to that. But at the moment, when it comes to developing this particular needed port that ground is being held on, what's the military strategic plan you think that should be or could be here?
Well, I'm going to go back to your intro, Dr. Bill. You said it's a high stakes showdown, except the United States hasn't showed up. Your audience is going to think this is insane, but the company that owns this 850 square mile piece of Chilean property, okay, this real estate, reached out to President Trump in his first administration 5 years ago, and there was no interest. Now, the world has changed since then, and there was no active MOU between this American company, by the way, patriotic American ownership, and it's active right now. So the situation's changed. I have had a couple of conversations with members of Congress or their staff, rather. I'm trying to get to either the President of the United States to pitch this to him or to the Secretary of State. Now, mind you, my my client, this patriotic American owner, okay, this company, they don't need a dime from the United States. They can raise the money through what are called bonds. Now, just to give you a little bit of insight of how bonds typically work. Let's say someone is building a new bridge between two towns, okay? That this bridge will increase commerce, which means it will increase taxes. Well, in order to spend, the money, say $50 million, these two cities will put up bonds, maybe 10, 15%, which is pretty good, right? It is a very good return. And they'll say, we'll pay it back in 10 years. Well, this company, this American company that owns this deep water port project in Chile, okay, can get the bonds. All that it needs from the United States is a guarantee to back the bonds. And because it's a guarantee and not actual, American dollars, it's a decision that can be made in the executive branch. President Trump directs the Fed to say, back this. And it's a $1 billion project, okay? I think the Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, found that out. Yeah, exactly. He discovered that in the first, hour. And interestingly, the President Trump is shifting that money from USAID to the FDC. It's basically an acquisition company for the United States of America. So it's just, Dr. Bill, it's just a matter of reaching the president, reaching Secretary Rubio. And that's one of the things we're doing. And that's where you and your audience can really make a big difference here.
Well, with all the billions of dollars that are being found that have been wasted, and the billions of dollars that were set aside, and then we're finding that money was actually, what do they say, falling off the back of, gold bricks were falling off the back of ships or whatever, as a metaphor for they were hiding money basically for whatever purpose, we don't know. But at the end of the day, there's got to be a lot of resources available that are being freed up that could potentially either support it, or like you say, it may not need to support on that side, and it needs it on the other side, which is people reaching out and communicating that, this is an important piece that, we just kicked them out of Panama. Where are they going now? They're going to go down there and try to get something going in Chile, right?
You got it. Now, if I could add to what you're saying in terms of a deal, is there a bigger deal maker than the President Trump? I don't think so. So our path is, listen, if you back these bonds, we won't have to deal with the CCP, and you'll have first right to a military air base. But President Trump is very creative. And the United States now has the money to say, hey, tell the CCP to pound sand. We'll write the check. We'll send the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers down there. God bless America. So as long as we can get in front of President Trump or one of his key players, really maybe his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, I think it is, or Secretary Rubio, I mean, they'll be able to figure it out and say, we can do this. So there are a lot of ways to make this happen, so to speak.
So what kind of existing infrastructure is there right now? I mean, they've got to go and get in front of these folks and get their attention. But what infrastructure is already in place or is planned at this point?
Well, right now it's 850 square miles of pretty much open plains. And because there's not a lot of rainfall there's not a lot of sediment going into the port. So there's no really need for dredging, which is often a multi-billion-dollar and time-consuming endeavor. But in our case, despite the minimal, buildup of infrastructure there, the plan is to be open for business in 2 to 3 years, and our projections show that it will be fully operational and profitable in the next 2 to 3 years once it opens.
So basically with that capability, it also, when you talk about groceries and breadbasket, and I mean, Brazil and South America, they're a huge trading partner, I think, on all kinds of levels.
They sure are.
And making the ability to, enhance that is going to probably help prices in the U.S.
Exactly.
Keep out the CCP on whatever level that you can, so they're not getting greater influence down there. It sounds like a really critical time to look at something like that, especially when we kicked them out of Panama. So
yeah. In fact, yesterday we bought some blueberries. Dr. Bill, they were from Peru.
well,
And I live in the great free state of Florida, so that means it had to go through, across a lot of water. Some of the limitations of going through the Panama Canal is the food spoils, it rots. If the CCP can
it takes a long time to get through all the locks and got to wait in line, and what's the story there?
Exactly. If whoever has control, okay, they can, in terms of, like I said, we still want the CCP to be able to feed its people. We in no way want to hinder that, okay? But we don't want the BRI chokehold in our backyard. And what's going to happen is the production capability of, the breadbasket of South America is only 50%, Dr. Bill. If they can access more customers, they can increase their productivity and be more prosperous. We in the United States are all about, the American dream of, being prosperous, being able to take care of yourself and self-sufficient. That's something we would like to import to South America. But the CCP historically, they bring in prisoners to build bridges. Or if they hire locals, they pay almost slave wages, if you were, sub-poverty. So the CCP does not have a good reputation in that regard. But like you said, this will definitely help with lowering prices of food in the United States as well.
And so also, when you talk about 2,900, 2,700 miles, that's a long piece of coastline.
It is.
But I would think that there's only a few locations that are prime for a deep water port that's not going to be silted and be able to be maintained. So it's something that has a long life, like the Panama Canal and that kind of thing. And that's probably where they're planning this. What's the area called that they're planning this in?
Okay, so it's Region 3 of Chile. The name of the port project, it's near a town called Copiapo, but the name of the port is Copia Port E. Copia Port E. But for most people, it's easy to say the Chilean port. And there's a great picture there. And thank you for bringing that up. And you see those two blue hash marks. Those are the two passes for trains, and they feed right down into the deep water port, Copia Port E. And it says there it has to be less than a 3% grade or the trains can't get up across the Andes. And there's so much, the geography there, it suits the deep water ports. And whoever gets this, and this is why we say it's as important as the Panama Canal, and in some cases more important. And I'll quote your opening again. This is a high stakes global showdown, but the United States hasn't shown up. And there are a lot of your audience members out there who have great ideas or maybe ways to get us into, the office of Secretary Rubio or someone in the inner circle of President Trump who can really make a difference on this.
Okay. So as a call to action, maybe just, a brief summary in terms of a call to action. It sounds like it's really important that we have a presence there, that we don't let this go by and give the CCP another leg up, in another critically important place where commerce is going to take place, which will give them leverage that we should have and not to negatively have net leverage, but to make sure that negative leverage doesn't show up. So everybody has freedom of navigation, freedom of goods, including, the CCP, but not to the point where they can squeeze it down and then we lose access or we lose the ability to have a strategic geopolitical military capability, maybe out of that same area, right?
Exactly. So a call to action. If you were to say something to President Trump, Mr. Trump, do this real estate deal, get it in Chile. That's funny. Real estate in Chile. I know it sounds like Chile, but do the real estate deal. For the audience members, Senator Cruz is a very influential senator. If you have access to him, or if you're in Texas, say, hey, get this real estate deal in Chile, get the deep water port. My email is going to be there. And I've done other shows, Dr. Bill, and people have reached out to me from all over the world. Someone from Australia said the CCP and the BRI chokehold is here. Please help us. I can get you in touch with some senators here in Australia who want to talk with you. We want help from the United States. A company, very large company with a massive mining operation that says we would rather sell our lithium to the United States rather than the CCP that is knocking on our doorstep. So what we're talking about here is really a strategy, which is an extension of what the president's already doing. But if your audience has interest in engaging, they can email me, or if they have a connection, or if they want to just make a call to their senator, or if even to their member of Congress. But there's a lot that you can do. You'd be surprised.
Fantastic. I want to bring Melissa back on for a little bit of Q&A and just kind of see where we're at in terms of some thoughts or some questions, that might have crossed her mind as we're working on some of the conversation here.
Yeah.
Hello,
So,
Melissa.
hello. So I'm wondering, Matthew, why would an American company sell to the CCP?
Great question. So the folks who own this have been working on it for 7 years. Okay. Over $110 million have been invested into this. It's very expensive just to maintain it. So it is, a business owner is obligated to its shareholders to make it profitable. So they don't want to sell to the CCP. But if the CCP provides a legitimate offer, which they're in the process of doing, the U.S. has said no. And the CCP, we're anticipating, is going to give a substantial offer. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but what? So America would have to put in a counter offer, right? Would we have to buy it, or what would we need to do? They just want to work with us? That seems too good to be true.
Well, good question. If we have the backing of the United States, and I'm glad that you asked this because it kind of takes a little bit to wrap your head around this concept. When you have we can raise the bonds, meaning I will sell you this if you pay me, $10,000. I will pay you 10% every year, but I'll pay you at the end of 10 years. Okay. So if we get the guarantee of the United States that says, if these bonds fall through or this project falls through, I will pay you. Okay. Now, the United States already did that in the 80s under Reagan. It was called the Brady Act. And basically it was, in fact, one of my team members was there when it was suggested to President Reagan by Senator Brady. And what it basically was there was massive inflation in South America. We're talking 16% a day. And Senator Brady basically went to President Reagan and said, Mr. President, if we don't stop this, their currencies are going to be worthless. And these South American countries, Latin American countries, are going to be highly vulnerable to communism. So just like back then in the Brady Act, and that there are many tools that the executive branch, the president, has to legally guarantee these bonds. Now, if we have a presidential guarantee, we're talking, a U.S. guarantee, we can get 8%. But if we don't, it would be significantly more. And the more interest that you have, the more expensive the money is. And it's what's called a point of potential failure for the project. So now what we are asking is, with this guarantee, is we will give you the right to first refusal for a U.S. base, and we won't deal with the CCP. Okay, so those are the two things. Now, in that case, the bonds, it doesn't cost the United States a dime. And this is such a good project, and it's prudent that it's in the interest for the United States to do it. Now, President Trump is the deal maker. He could come in and say, let me tell you what we're going to do, boys. And he'll come up with something more.
And another thought is, I mean, Doge has found so much money in all these crazy projects around the world. You just can't even believe what you're reading or you're hearing, and the list continues to go on into the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars. without any strategic benefit to the U.S. on any level. And, you just, when you're supporting the enemy all the way to Iran and its proxies, with large money, you just kind of go, why would a project that's actually going to help our country be, a problem? Bonds even seem like they would just be almost too complicated. Like they could bring the money and take care of it. You know what I mean? Because there's so much.
Hey, listen, I agree with you, Dr. Bill, because there is a chance. Because here's the deal: in the next few months, folks, someone is going to own this port. Right. Somebody is going to be the CCP, or it's going to be the United States. Now, a third party can come in and say, "Well, we'll make an offer," but guess what? Who's going to be behind that? The CCP.
Right, sure.
Matthew, kind of seeing like how Trump works, and maybe this is just my own theory of something that could maybe Trump might do. I don't know. It kind of surprises me sometimes. This is America First mentality. So like for your example with the blueberries from Peru, Trump goes, if you give it to China, we're not buying blueberries from you anymore. Or like, we're going to do America blueberries and get them here. Do you think that that's something he would do? Good
question. Well, I'll tell you what, he doesn't have to deal with the country of Chile. All he has to deal with the CEO of this company, who is a patriotic American and wants to do business. Understand really clearly, folks. And if I were speaking to Secretary Rubio, to Susie Wiles, President Trump's chief of staff, or President Trump himself, this American company will make a lot more money if they work with the CCP. It's not about money. It's about American sovereignty and national security, not only for the United States, but for the Western Hemisphere. So there will be benefits to the country of Chile, security, definitely more prosperity, because there's so much potential. President Trump likes to develop land. He even said to, Kim Il-jung, hey, there's such beautiful, beaches. Why not build hotels there? We're inviting the president of the United States, build here. But the hard part is just getting this message to him.
Fantastic. Matthew, great information. Really glad to have you on the show today and kind of bring forward something that is not on everybody's radar, something kind of unique and different for people to consider. It's a big world out there, and there's a lot more going on besides the politics in the U.S. But this plays into a much bigger picture, longer term strategies. We have to have them ourselves. We can't just let our adversaries have the long-term strategies and then be in effect all the time. So I think that the Panama Canal and its investment was a long-term strategy that's proved very prudent over the years. And this was probably falling into the same category and basket of things that we should invest in and be part of on the front end, so that we're not, and we have, some controlling interest so that we're not at effect down the road, right?
Exactly. You got it, Dr. Bill. And great questions, Melissa. Thank you for asking those.
Yep, no problem. I'm glad to have you back on. And hopefully if things change, we'll have you back on for an update.
And last thing, if it's possible, I think you can put it on the Chiron, my email. If I could share that, Dr. Bill?
Sure.
Yeah, it's AmericaFirst@secure.com. It's AmericaFirst@SEKUR.com. SEKUR.com.
That will be down in the description as well, everybody. So you won't have to remember. You can just copy it and paste it. So.
Well, we hope you're successful. Wishing you good luck, and we'll check back in with you, Matthew.
Thanks, Dr. Bill. Thanks, Melissa.
Great. Thank you.
Lacing up those boots, strapping on that vest, spin that radio on, pin a star in the chest, just doing what we love and doing what we do. We kiss our family goodbye before we go. Crazy world out there, only the good Lord knows. If we take that last call, the Calvary will be there to hold that line. Where we fall, we're holding that thin blue line, 'cause that's what we do. We don't call anytime, anywhere. Just do what we love, yeah, do what we do. Blue lights and sirens, yeah, it's time to go. No time to defund this. You should know that we're not perfect. We're human, we're flawed. Just save us some grace for the sake of us all. We're holding that thin blue line, 'cause that's what we do. We don't do it for the glory, we do it for you. No matter the price, we'll sacrifice, we will. We'll hold that line. We're holding that thin blue line. That's what we do. We don't do it for the glory, we do it for you.